Boy faces millionaire and whispers, "I can make your daughter walk." And then something unbelievable happened on that freezing morning. The world seemed to breathe through machines. The city was just waking up, cars coughing out steam, sirens blending with the barking of stray dogs. But there, near the hospital entrance, everything stopped for a moment. A desperate man, sweating despite the cold, crossed the sidewalk with his daughter in his arms. Her eyes were shut, limbs motionless, as if her body no longer belonged to her. With each step, the man trembled, not from the weight of the child, but from the urgency of saving her. And then he saw him, a boy, huddled over a cardboard box, wearing a coat far too old and too big, like a forgotten blanket. He wasn't begging. He didn't stretch out his hand. He was just drawing. A worn grey notebook, edges nearly disintegrated, where he sketched with deep focus. His fingers, purple from the cold, moved with a precision that didn't match his age. And still he looked up at the man and said, "I can make her walk." The words didn't sound like a plea for attention. They sounded like a statement. Like, truth? The man froze, staring at the boy as if looking into a hallucination. There was no time for jokes or fantasies. "What did you say?" The boy stood up. Small, thin, with the eyes of someone who sees what others can't. He nodded toward the man's daughter. "She wants to come back, but she's stuck somewhere else. If you let me, I can bring her back." There was no arrogance in his voice, no madness, just a terrifying calm. The man, not understanding, dropped to his knees. He wept. The hospital was 5 steps away, but he no longer believed medicine could help. And then, something in the girl's chest stirred. Not her heart. It was like she was breathing with effort, trying to cling to the surface of her own existence. The man felt it, and for the first time, he looked at the boy as someone who might just be something more. "Who are you?" he whispered. The boy, Eli, simply turned his notebook around. The drawing was of the girl. She was standing, arms outstretched, smiling, but there was something the man didn't know yet. That wasn't the first drawing Eli had made like that, and it wouldn't be the last. That's how it all began. Not with promises, but with a drawing, a silence, and a kind of faith born from fear. Eli never really knew where he was born. His first memory was the sound of subway tracks. Not something scary, more like a lullaby that rocked him to sleep during freezing nights in the city's tunnels. A woman with bony hands carried him in her arms and sang softly. She used to say he came from the wind, and that the wind sometimes took special ones far away when the world didn't understand them. She called it the hour of silence. One night the woman disappeared. No sound, no goodbye. Eli woke up with her coat folded over his chest and a notebook beside him, the same one he used to this day, old, with a grey cover and yellowed pages. It was nearly full already, but not with landscapes or animals like most kids would draw. These were pictures of people he'd never met, sad people, hurt people, people who looked like they were asking for help. And the strangest part, days after he drew them, those people would appear, exactly like in the sketches. He didn't understand it, but he also never questioned it. For years, Eli lived in the spaces grown-ups forgot, slept between boxes, kept warm with cardboard, ate what he could find. But what truly kept him alive was the notebook. Every time he felt that tingle in his fingertips, like the world itself was asking to be drawn, he obeyed. And something would change, as if, through worn-down graphite, he was putting something back in its place. Something that had been broken, but only once. He tried to heal someone he loved. It was a girl, Zoe. Small eyes and a crooked smile. He found her curled behind a newsstand, scraped knees and dull eyes. She didn't speak, but she drew too. For weeks they stayed together, trading pages, sharing made-up words and real silences, until the day Zoe disappeared, and this time Eli tried to draw her back, page after page. But she never returned. From that day on he made a vow. He would never draw out of desperation again, only out of listening, only when the silence said it was time. And that day, seeing the girl in her father's arms, he heard the silence. That's why he spoke. She wants to come back. She's stuck in a dark place, but she still hears her name. The father, dazed, didn't know what to think. They were both sitting next to the hospital's revolving door, but no nurse seemed to notice. As if they were on a different frequency altogether. The man laid his daughter down on the cardboard beside Eli. He was breathing heavily. Looking from the boy to the hospital door like each offered a chance and a loss. You've done this before? Eli shook his head. No lies, no pride, but she really wants to come back. And I heard her. He opened the notebook, pulled out a pencil stub, barely bigger than a birthday candle, and began to draw again. With each line, his hand trembled less. It was as if the graphite had a will of its own. The girl's eyes lit up on the paper. Her legs, frozen in real life, stood strong in the sketch. And for the first time, the father cried without panic. He cried like someone watching a miracle take shape. But then, Eli stopped. The pencil broke, and with it the silence shattered too. From the hospital, someone finally noticed them. A nurse ran toward the door. "What are you doing with that child on the ground?" she yelled. The father leapt up, scooping his daughter into his arms. She was still limp. Eli sat there, notebook in his lap, eyes full of something that wasn't sadness. It was deeper. "She's not ready yet," he said softly. But something was about to change. The nurse grabbed the father's arm, demanding answers. Her voice sliced the air like cold glass. He tried to speak, but only stammered. The girl remained still, trapped between worlds, and Eli stayed seated, notebook in his lap, gaze lowered like someone used to being ignored. Again. "This is insane," the nurse shouted. "You left your daughter on the floor with a stranger, a child." The father didn't respond. Inside him, the tiny flicker of faith he had was already battling the guilt of looking foolish. In the ER, doctors ran toward them and tore the girl from his arms, as if each second could cost her life. And only then did the man look back at Eli. But instead of fear or frustration, the boy simply closed his notebook and said, "Now she has to choose. I can't push her." The man's lips parted, his eyes red. "You're playing with people's pain. You have no idea what we're going through." Eli stayed silent, and that silence, more than any word, started to chip away at something inside that father. Because there was pain in Eli, but it wasn't a child's pain. It was older. Something Eli had known a long time. "You think you're the only one who's lost someone," Eli whispered. "But some people die before their bodies stop. Your daughter, she's trying to come back because she still hears you. If you give up now, she will too." But there was something Eli didn't know yet. The girl's father carried guilt no doctor could heal. Because in that car, minutes before the crash, he had yelled at her. A stupid fight. Something about a phone, about being distracted. And when the truck ran the red light, he was still looking. In the rearview mirror, still yelling. She was looking at him. And it was with that look that she passed out. The impact didn't take her. The guilt made him believe it did. Now sitting in the waiting room, surrounded by the scent of antiseptic and the beeping of monitors in the background, he stared at his empty hands. For the first time, he asked himself if the girl would be able to forgive him. And if she couldn't, maybe she wouldn't want to come back. Outside, Eli was still there, quiet, forgotten again, until a security guard showed up, impatient. "You can't be here, kid. This is private property." Eli didn't even look up. He just picked up his notebook and started walking away. But each step felt heavier than the last, because inside, he too was battling a memory that never left. Zoe. She had also said she'd come back. She had promised too. But then, she vanished. As if she'd grown tired of waiting for the world to let her return. As he walked, Eli felt the wind colder than ever. It wasn't the city's cold. It was the chill of abandonment. The same one that visited him every day. But that day, it tasted like an opportunity slipping through his fingers. Behind him, the hospital door opened again. The girl's father came running out. "Wait," he shouted. "Please, tell me what I have to do." Eli stopped, but didn't. "Turn around right away. You have to listen to her even if you don't understand." The man dropped to his knees like someone who no longer had pride, only faith. "Teach me." Eli walked up to him, pulled a new pencil from his coat pocket, The last full one he had, he handed it to the man. "She'll talk to you. In a dream, listen and draw." "I don't know how to draw, no one does, until they really start listening." And the father held the pencil like it was a key to something he'd never had the courage to unlock. Inside, the girl slept, but her fingers twitched ever so slightly. But in that moment, someone was watching. From across the street, behind the fogged-up window of a parked car, eyes fixed on the boy. It wasn't the first time someone had seen Eli do what he did. That night, the girl's father didn't sleep. Sitting in one of the chairs in the pediatric wing, Eli's pencil still in his hand, he tried to keep his eyes open. His daughter was still unconscious, hooked up to machines that drew peaks and valleys on a screen, as if her body was slowly trying to breathe its way back into reality. Doctors said they didn't know why she hadn't woken up. Clinically, she was stable, but her mind seemed trapped somewhere else. "She'll find you in the dream," Eli had said, but all the man saw was darkness. When he finally dozed off, nothing came. No images, no voices. Just a crushing void. And when he woke, he'd drawn nothing more than a dot in the middle of the page, a single dot that strangely seemed to be staring back at him. Meanwhile, Eli wandered the streets. With the notebook closed, he became just another kid no one saw. No one noticed the ancient wisdom in his eyes. No one saw that he heard more than any adult around him. But that night, someone did. A black car followed his steps from the hospital door. Headlights off, engine barely audible. Inside, a man in a grey suit watched Eli like someone guarding a secret too valuable to lose. Eli stopped at the corner of a deserted street. The car stopped too. He knew, he could feel it. But there was something that man didn't know yet. Eli wasn't just a boy with a gift. He was the living memory of a promise made long ago by someone who vanished without a trace. The next morning, the girl's father returned to the hospital entrance. He looked for Eli but didn't find him. He waited, asked other homeless people. No one had seen him. It was as if he'd vanished with the cold of the night. Restlessness grew. Inside, the man started to believe the chance had passed. Worse yet, that he had wasted the only real moment of connection with his daughter since the accident. But then, a nurse called him. "Mr. Dorian, your daughter is showing new signs of brain activity, small motor impulses in her hands. It's like she's trying to communicate." He ran to her room, and there she was, still unconscious, but her fingers trembled, tracing something invisible into the sheets. Dorian sat down, picked up the pencil, opened the notebook, and let his hand go free. What appeared on the page was an image of Eli, sitting on a pile of boxes, but behind him, a dark figure with white eyes. "What is this?" he whispered, but there was no answer. Only a memory that hit Dorian like a punch, a name he'd heard years ago on the news. Something about a boy who healed people through drawings. A story that was buried, discredited. They said it was a hoax. But now faced with that sketch, drawn by his unconscious daughter, he knew Eli was real. And someone was watching him. He tried to tell someone, report it, search for records of the boy, but the hospitals had nothing. No data, no file, no patient named Eli, as if he'd never existed. Meanwhile, Eli walked through narrower and narrower alleys. He knew he was being hunted, didn't know who or why, but he felt the pressure growing, and then he fell, pushed by unseen hands. He crashed between two garbage bins. The notebook flew from his hands and landed in a puddle. Eli reached for it, but a figure grabbed him by the shoulder. "You have something that doesn't belong to you," a voice said. It was the man from the car. "Those drawings, they're doors. And you're opening them without permission." Eli tried to scream, but no one was around. This time, the silence didn't help. But at the hospital, the girl opened her eyes. For the first time. "Daddy." "He's scared," she whispered. Dorian felt the ground vanish beneath him. She was back, but Eli might be slipping away. Tell us in the comments where you're reading this from, and don't forget to like the post. The grip on Eli's shoulder was more than physical. It was like that dark hand was trying to pull something invisible out of him. The man who held him wore a coat with no emblem, his face hidden under a shadowy hood, but his voice carried the confidence of someone used to inspiring fear. "You don't know what you're doing, kid. These drawings, they're not just pictures. They open paths that were meant to stay closed." Eli didn't struggle. He looked the man in the eyes, and even with a dirty face and scraped knees, he stayed calm. "I only listen. I only draw what already wants to come back." The man leaned closer, pressed his face to Eli's and whispered, "And who told you? The ones who want to come back deserve to." Then he let go, slowly, as if offering the boy one last chance. Behind them, the notebook still floated in the puddle, its edges wrinkled like the skin of someone who's suffered too long. Eli picked it up, even with the pages stained, even with the drawings blurred, but there was something the man still didn't know. Eli didn't just draw those who wanted to return, he also drew the ones who needed to leave, and in that notebook, among the many folded pages, there was one unfinished drawing, the hooded man himself, alone, crying, in a place that didn't seem to exist. As Eli staggered back toward the hospital, Dorian held his daughter's hand. She now looked at him with sleepy but conscious eyes. Her first request was for a pencil, and when she got it, she drew the same scene. Eli collapsed, his notebook soaked, a shadow looming behind him. "He needs me," she whispered. "Who is he?" Dorian asked, though he already knew the answer. "He brought me back. Now he needs me. To call him too." Dorian ran, bolted out of the hospital, like a man who'd finally found a purpose greater than guilt. Memories crashed over him like waves, the shouting, the crash, the silence in his daughter's eyes. But now Eli's words echoed louder than them all. She wants to come back. And now he understood. Eli was more than a boy with gifts. He was a bridge between worlds, and now he was the one being pulled into the dark. On the other side of the city, Eli sat beneath a bridge, his fingers trembling. He opened the notebook carefully. Some pages were lost, but others still held fragments of what needed to be done. He began drawing the hooded man. But now he wasn't an enemy. He was a boy, with frightened eyes, holding a torn drawing. Behind him stood a woman with bony hands, the same woman who had once raised Eli. And Eli understood. That man. He too had been touched before. Someone who hadn't been heard in time. But then something interrupted him. A group of men was approaching, and this time they weren't alone. "Grab the notebook," one of them shouted. Eli ran. He cut corners, ducked into alleys, lungs burning. But the sound of boots behind him was relentless. They didn't want the notebook for what it healed. They wanted it for what it hid. Back at the hospital, Dorian arrived breathless. His daughter was standing weak but steady. "Dad, I know where he is." "How?" "I dreamed it, and that wasn't strange anymore. It was necessary." They left together. Dorian drove like the world depended on it. His daughter guided him, every street, every turn, as if Eli was calling her back through invisible threads, and they found him, on the ground, surrounded, the notebook torn, one of the men gripping Eli's arm. "Let him go," Dorian yelled. The men turned. One of them laughed. "This kid's not your problem." But then the girl stepped out of the car, struggling but firm. "He's my friend. And you're afraid, not of him, but of what he might remember." A cold silence fell over the alley. Eli, even wounded, smiled, because now he wasn't alone. But something worse was coming. The hooded man was among them, and this time his eyes were pitch black. The sound of the notebook being torn cut through the air like a silent scream. Pages flew, some soaked with ink and rain, others still wet with unfinished stories. Eli tried to run, but his arm was yanked violently. The man with black eyes, now fully revealed, no longer looked human. His movements were precise, cold, almost programmed. There was no anger, only mission, as if erasing Eli was fixing a crack in the world. "Why do you do this?" he asked, crouching in front of the boy. Eli tried to answer, but no strength came. He was dirty, blood on his lips, his eyes clouded with exhaustion. "Because they call me," he whispered. "They?" The man raised an eyebrow. "You hear voices?" "No. The silence. They come in the silence." The man's hand slapped Eli across the face, dry without rage but with brutal intent. He wanted to break something inside him, to erase that fragile light that still refused to die. Dorian ran toward them, but was stopped. Two men pinned him against the wall. His daughter screamed, but she too was restrained, her eyes locked onto Eli's. She watched the boy who had brought her back now being ripped away from the world, and she could do nothing. "He won't interfere again," said the black-eyed man. "The world needs order, and memory is disorder." Then he tore out the oldest page in the notebook, the one Eli never let anyone see. The drawing of the woman with the bony hands. Eli screamed, "No!" It was more than a scream. It was the breaking of something ancient, as if that paper held the thread that tied him to the world. And when it was ripped, Eli seemed to wilt. His hands lost strength, his body gave out. Something inside him dimmed, but there was something that man didn't know. Memory, even torn, doesn't die. It simply changes form. That night, Dorian and his daughter returned to the hospital in silence. Eli didn't come with them. No one knew where he was. The last image they had was of him being taken away, eyes shut, body limp, like hers had been just days before. Days passed. No sign of him. Not in alleys. Not in shelters. None of the homeless had seen him. As if the boy had dissolved into the rain, Dorian's daughter, still recovering, tried to redraw the fragments she remembered. But the lines wouldn't follow. They felt disconnected. And at night, she cried. Alone, as if something inside her had been ripped out too. Dorian, in turn, buried himself in records. Old news, buried reports. He found a story from 8 years ago. An unidentified boy known only as E had supposedly interfered in the recovery of 3 coma patients. The case was silenced. Documents vanished within weeks. But in Bilan Sabin Sub, the photo, he recognized the eyes. They were Eli's. The silence that now filled the hospital was one of absence. Even with his daughter back, something felt incomplete. Eli, during that time, was locked away. A room with no windows, a chair, a flickering bulb, and in front of him, the black-eyed man. "You're just a glitch in the system," the man said. "Art, affection, empathy, they're old addictions. We have to erase those roots so order can take hold." Eli no longer responded. His body moved like someone shut down from the inside. His drawings were gone now, existing only as echoes in memory. But then, a sound, paper tearing in the distance, like an echo. Eli slowly lifted his head. It was as if part of him could still hear. On the wall, someone had taped a drawing, cut out and pieced back together, the girl standing. And behind her, Eli. It was hers. She had redrawn it, imperfect, scared, but true. And in that instant, Eli knew. The connection hadn't been broken, just put to sleep, but he couldn't leave yet. Worse, something inside him was fading, because even with her love, he was starting to forget who he was. For days, the girl kept drawing, not to pass time, not to escape, but as if each line was a lifeline. A desperate attempt to reconnect 2 worlds. She barely slept. Each dream was of Eli, trapped in a place without color. Even awake, she felt him calling, not with words, but with a painful absence, like the void left by someone, who left without saying goodbye. "He's forgetting," she told her father. Dorian sat beside her. He brought stacks of paper, old news clippings, partial reports, trying to understand who Eli was. But the clearest truth wasn't in the files. It was in his daughter. "How do you know?" "Because I almost forgot too. When I was there, wherever there is, it felt like being inside a silence that swallows everything. But he pulled me back, and now he's alone in there. And no one's pulling." Dorian took a deep breath. He'd never felt so powerless. But something in her voice left no room for doubt. She took a new sheet of paper, laid it in front of her, and instead of drawing Eli, she drew the room, the chair, the dim light, And in the center, not the boy but the silence, in the shape of a shadow, a black blotch with the outline of the dark-eyed man. She didn't know how, but she felt it. To fight the silence, she had to draw it. But there was something she didn't know yet. On the other side, Eli was starting to feel again. First it was a sound, a faint rustling like paper folding, then a faint light reflecting on the wall, something that hadn't been there before. And then, as if the world blinked inside his eyes, he saw it, on the cell floor, a sheet of paper, new, with a drawing. Himself, but different. He was standing, arms outstretched, behind him the girl and more others, people he had saved. Figures he barely remembered now drawn close again. Eli touched the paper and cried, not from pain, but from memory, his first tear since they took him, because in that moment, he knew someone still believed in him. Outside, Dorian watched his daughter. Her energy was different now. Like every line drawn was pulling Eli back. He wanted to help, but didn't know how. "Teach me," he said. She smiled, tired, but hopeful, It's not about drawing, it's about remembering. Close your eyes, think about the sound of his voice, how he looked at you when he gave you hope back, and let your hand follow. Dorian tried, and to his surprise his hand began to move, uncertain, trembling but honest. When he finished, there was only one word written, Eli, but the letters seemed to vibrate. In the hideout, Eli collapsed to his knees. The wall in front of him cracked, not physically but deep inside, as if the emotional prison surrounding him had begun to crumble. But then, the door opened. The man with black eyes stepped in. Still trying to resist, Eli stood, still weak. But something had returned to his eyes, something ancient, and the man recognized it and feared it. "You were a child once too," Eli said, his voice steady. The man hesitated. "That doesn't matter." "It does, because you used to draw too. You just forgot." Eli took a step forward, held out the paper with the shadowy figures. It rested between his fingers. "You're here too, on the last page." The man swallowed hard. His black eyes flickered, and for the first time they trembled. But something even stronger was coming. Back at the hospital, dozens of children began to draw, as if the same dream had visited them. Every single one drew the same thing. A door, open, and in the center, Eli, waiting. The page floated between Eli's fingers as if it had a life of its own. The drawing, once just an image, now pulsed. Each line seemed to emit a sound, an echo from far away. Like the children who had drawn him were calling his name together, and he heard them. For the first time since he was taken, he heard them clearly. Across the cell, the man with black eyes was still watching, but there was no longer resolve in his movements. The silence around him was shaking. Small cracks formed. Something inside him was falling apart. "I know that line," he murmured. "I remember this." Eli walked toward him, held out the page, not as a challenge but an invitation. "You used to hear the silence too, didn't you?" The man didn't reply, but his eyes betrayed something. Behind the hardness, there was pain, old pain, buried beneath years of denial. "You used to draw your mother," Eli said gently, like revealing a forgotten truth. "Always the same scene, her walking away. You kept trying to bring her back." The man dropped to his knees. His voice came out broken. "I was like you. But they told me I was crazy. They locked me away. Said I had to forget. So I forgot." Eli knelt, placed the notebook in front of him, not as judgment, but as a gesture of hope. "Draw again. She's still there." In the silence, but Eli didn't know yet that this simple act would change everything. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the children continued drawing. It was as if an invisible current passed through them. Doctors and nurses began to notice. The drawings were different, but they all pointed to the same thing, a dark place, with a window open, and in each one, Eli. But now he had wings, drawn by many hands. Dorian watched, confused but deeply moved. His daughter arranged the pages on the floor, creating a massive mosaic, and when the final page was placed, a larger image emerged, Eli, surrounded by light, holding an open notebook that unfolded like a map. In the center, a path drawn in, pencil incomplete. Dad, this path is for him to come back. But come back from where? From where pain is stronger than memory. We have to finish the drawing, all of us. Back in the hideout, the man was drawing. His hands trembled, sweat dripped down his face. Each line seemed to pull out a piece of buried grief. When he finished, it was her. His mother, sitting by a bed, eyes on a notebook. Him as a small boy sleeping beside her. Eli smiled. She saw you. You were never alone. The man cried. For the first time in decades, he cried like someone relearning how to feel, and with those tears, the silence inside him broke. The cell began to change. Its walls dissolved like dust touched by wind. The light flickered less. And then, everything went dark. Outside, Dorian and his daughter ran into the street. The children from the hospital, drawn by an instinct no one could explain, gathered in a circle in the courtyard. In the center, they left an open space, a drawing on the ground, a door, and the moment the last child touched the image, it opened. Light. From me. The center of the light, a shadow appeared, small, shaking, but standing. Eli, his eyes downcast. His body fragile but intact. Behind him, the man, no longer hooded, eyes clear, walking like someone returning from far away. The children clapped, some cried, others just smiled, like they were seeing an old friend. Eli walked up to the girl. They looked at each other. No words were spoken. She simply handed him a new notebook. You've got a lot left to fix in the world, she said, steady. Eli opened the notebook. Blank pages, a new beginning. But there was something no one else knew. The first drawing he would make wouldn't be of someone sick. It would be of her, standing, smiling, sun behind her, like a promise. The first line on the new notebook wasn't drawn in haste. Eli held the pencil as if holding a sacred name. Around him, the children returned to their routines, but something in them had changed, their eyes more alert, hands that now wanted to capture the world with more meaning. Dorian stood beside his daughter, watching the boy in silent reverence, like seeing an angel who bleeds like everyone else, yet still walks with purpose. Eli closed his eyes, and for a moment, he didn't draw the present or the future. He drew the absence, the woman with bony hands. The page appeared on its own. As if memory had finally given her permission to return, the lines were precise. The way she tied her hair with strips of cloth, the way she clutched her coat tight on cold nights, and the look in her eyes, the look of someone carrying the weight of the world, but still finding time to sing to a boy hidden in the subway. But there was something new in the drawing. She was sitting, with the grey notebook in her lap, and beside her, a small shadow, lying down. Eli understood. She hadn't abandoned him. She had died. But his silence had turned her death into disappearance. The truth broke something inside him. He dropped to his knees. The pencil rolled away and his body began to shake. Dorian rushed to him, but didn't touch him. He knew some things can't be carried for another. The girl knelt in front of him, held his hands. She saw you till the very end, and you brought her with you. You always did. She was in every drawing. She was who you were hearing. Eli opened his eyes and cried, not like a child, but like someone who, after years of carrying the world, finally lays it down. She said, "The wind carries the special ones," he whispered. "I thought it was just a story. Maybe it was, but maybe it was also the truth." The man with clear eyes stepped closer, now with his name restored, Samuel. He held something in his hands, an envelope, yellowed, with Eli written in faded ink. "I found this in the old shelter records," he said. "I never had the courage to open it, but it's yours." Eli took it, his hands trembling. He carefully tore it open. Inside, a folded page, one last drawing. It was him, a newborn in her arms. She was smiling, On the back, a sentence: "If he listens to the silence, the world will remember how to heal." Eli closed his eyes. Her voice returned, not with sadness, but with peace. The new notebook began to fill on its own. It wasn't magic. It was memory. Everything he'd held inside for years now surged back. The smiles he saved, the gazes he restored, the bonds he rebuilt. But then, the ground trembled. Not physically, but deeply. On the other side of the city, in a smaller hospital, a child slipped into a coma. The doctors, unaware of what they were triggering, handed a sheet of paper to the mother to help record memories. The woman began to draw. It was Eli. The world was now calling for him. So even before he knew it, "It's starting again," the girl said softly. Eli nodded, but not with the heaviness of before, with acceptance. "I won't walk alone anymore." He looked up at Samuel. "Are there others like me?" "Many, but most of them are still afraid to remember. Then we'll remember with them." And there in the center of that silent courtyard, Eli made one final drawing that day, a circle, with 3 figures inside, himself, the girl, and Samuel. In each of their hands a notebook, but in the center, an empty space, for whoever was still to come. The next morning, the city felt like it was breathing differently. Not because of the sun, it barely peeked through the tall buildings, but because of something more subtle. The children who used to draw monsters were now drawing bridges, doors, people looking each other in the eyes. And in many of those drawings, a boy in an oversized coat holding a short pencil. Eli walked. Slowly, the new notebook firm in his hands, still blank, because now he understood. Not every silence is a cry for help. Some are just pauses. Dorian, his daughter, and Samuel walked beside him, not as guardians, but as presents, as witnesses, as part of what Eli now knew was home, not made of bricks, but of people who listen. They returned to the old subway tunnel, where it had all begun. Eli stopped at the entrance. The wind still sang in there, but it wasn't cold anymore. It was memory. It was voice. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket, the last portrait of the woman with the bony hands. He placed it on the ground between 2 stones, not as someone leaving something behind, but as someone returning it to its origin. "Thank you," he whispered, "for staying with me, even after you were gone." Dorian stepped closer. He didn't speak. He simply placed another drawing. Beside it, one he had made days ago, it was Eli, older, with long hair, smiling. Surrounded by children, Eli looked at it and smiled back. "I don't look like that yet," he joked. "You will?" Dorian replied. Samuel stood in silence. The weight he had carried for years now felt light. For the first time, it felt like the world was speaking to him again, and that he had something to say back. "I want to find the others," Eli said. "The ones who draw, the ones who listen, the ones who stopped because they were scared." "And what will you tell them?" the girl asked. Eli paused for a moment, looked up at the sky, where a plane scratched the horizon with a thin white line like a pencil across paper, that they don't have to fix everything, they just can't forget. At the school he now attended as a special student, Eli drew less, he observed more. Sometimes a child would come up to him silently and leave a drawing on his desk. No explanation, just the gesture. Eli kept everyone at home, now a home in the high, truest sense. There was a box where he placed all those drawings. He called them echoes, because he knew one day when the world forgets again, it'll be these echoes that wake him. One night in his sleep he dreamed of Zoe. She stood tall, hair short, her crooked smile just as he remembered. Only now, she was grown. "You came back," he said. "I've always been here," she replied. "It's just that now you can see me." Are you still—" She touched her chest. "It doesn't matter. What matters is you kept going." Eli woke up in peace. The girl, his best friend now, waited for him at the school gate. They didn't say much, but between them there was a bond, unbreakable. She held a notebook just like his, also blank. "Ready to start?" she asked. "Let's do it," he said. But instead of heading to class, they walked to the town square, sat on the ground, between fallen leaves and distant voices, and they drew, not people, a world, with streets that embraced, hospitals that listened, schools with open windows, and homes that welcomed, even when someone didn't know how to return, and in the center of that world, a child with a notebook, no face because it could be anyone. Eli closed his eyes. The silence returned, but this time, not as a burden, as a foundation, because now he knew. Some hear the silence. Others learn to draw it, but everyone, sooner or later, learns to return, and that's when the world remembers how to heal, not with speed, not with force, but with presence, with drawing, with faith. Thank you for reading all the way through. But don't go just yet. On the screen beside you, there's one more moving story waiting for you. Click, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who needs it. I'll see you there.